She reaches for your hand in bed, not for comfort, for connection. The kind of connection you used to answer without thinking. You pretend to be asleep. It's been months since you felt like a man who could answer that call. Months since your body felt like it belonged to someone who still burned from the inside out. The morning light filters through the curtains, and you wonder when you stopped feeling the heat of your own blood. When did the fire inside you become just embers? When did you stop being a man who felt powerful in his own skin and become someone just present? The question burns quietly, like everything else about being a man after 70. Quiet, hidden, unspoken. Before we dive in, let me ask you something simple, friend. Where are you watching this from? Drop it in the comments. We may be scattered by distance, but we are walking this road together. Still here, still breathing, still worth it. Robert sat across from me at the diner, stirring sugar into coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. 72 years old, still broad-shouldered, still the kind of man who commanded respect when he walked into a room. But something behind his eyes had gone dim. "It's not just the energy," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Though that's part of it. I wake up feeling like I'm running on empty. Not tired, empty, like someone drained my tank while I was sleeping." I knew what he meant, the kind of empty that goes deeper than physical exhaustion. The empty that makes you feel like you're impersonating the man you used to be. "But it's more than that," Robert continued, and his voice dropped even lower. "It's the wanting. I don't want things anymore. Food tastes like cardboard. Nothing excites me, even looking at my wife. I love her, you understand? But I don't hunger for her anymore. Don't hunger for anything." The confession hung between us like a weight we both recognized. This is the conversation men our age have in whispers, if we have it at all. The slow fade of appetite, the gradual dimming of the fire that once made us feel invincible. Robert had noticed it first in the morning, used to wake up with what he called morning strength, not just physical energy, but the feeling that his blood was moving with purpose, that his body still housed something wild and powerful. "Now I wake up feeling like an old man," he said, "not because of aches or pains, because I feel neutral, like my body's just a vehicle I'm borrowing instead of something I own, something that still has lightning in it." The worst part wasn't the physical change, it was the mental shift. When a man stops feeling vital in his body, he stops acting vital in his life. He becomes careful instead of bold, cautious instead of confident. He starts asking permission instead of taking charge. "My wife tries to initiate," Robert said, and the pain in his voice was raw. "And I feel nothing, not just physically, though that too, but emotionally, like that part of me just went to sleep, and I'm terrified it's not waking up." This is the conversation we don't have. The one about how masculinity at 70 isn't just about being strong or capable. It's about still feeling like a man who burns, who wants, who looks at his wife and feels that old familiar stirring, who wakes up feeling like he could conquer the day instead of just survive it. "I started avoiding mirrors," Robert admitted, "not because I look old. Hell, I've made peace with that, but because when I look in the mirror, I see someone who's given up, someone who's accepted that the fire is supposed to go out, that this is just how it is now." But here's what Robert didn't know yet, what I was just beginning to understand. The fire doesn't have to go out. It just needs different kindling. And sometimes the spark comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes it comes from remembering that a man's vitality isn't something that happens to him. It's something he cultivates, something he feeds, something he chooses to keep alive. Robert wasn't broken. He wasn't too old. He wasn't past the point of feeling powerful in his own skin. He was just starving the fire instead of feeding it. It began with cold water, not the idea of it, Robert had been thinking about cold showers for months, reading about their benefits online, bookmarking articles he never acted on. It began with him actually turning the handle. "I don't know what possessed me," he told me 3 weeks later. "Just woke up one morning and thought, what if I stopped negotiating with myself? What if I just did one thing that would shock my system awake?" The shower was 30 seconds of cold hell. His body screaming, his breath coming in gasps, every nerve ending firing like he'd grabbed a live wire. But afterward, something had shifted. "I felt awake," he said, "not just alert, alive. Like my blood remembered it was supposed to move with power." That night, for the first time in months, Robert looked at his wife and felt something stir. Not just affection, hunger. The old familiar heat that reminded him he was still a man with fire in his veins. But the real breakthrough came when he discovered the morning didn't end with the cold shower. It began there. Robert started researching what he called the old ways, how men throughout history had cultivated vitality and power. What he found surprised him. Ancient Romans started their day with cold baths and specific foods. Warriors across cultures had morning rituals designed to stoke their inner fire. "I realized," Robert said, "that modern men have forgotten something our ancestors knew. Vitality isn't automatic, it's cultivated. And it starts with how you greet the day." Robert's new morning ritual became sacred. Cold shower, followed by specific foods, chosen not just for nutrition, but for their historical reputation as vitality enhancers. Dark chocolate with at least 70% cacao, pomegranate juice, walnuts and honey, avocado with a drizzle of good olive oil and a pinch of sea salt. "I felt ridiculous at first," he admitted. "Like I was playing with voodoo, but after 2 weeks, something undeniable was happening. I was waking up with energy, real energy, the kind that makes you feel like you could build something, fight something, love someone with force." His wife noticed the change before he did. "You're moving differently," she said one evening, "like you're comfortable in your own skin again, like you remember you're dangerous." Dangerous. The word hit Robert like electricity. When had he stopped feeling dangerous? When had he started moving through the world like someone who apologized for taking up space instead of someone who commanded it? The morning ritual was reawakening something primal. The cold water shocked his nervous system alive. The carefully chosen foods fed not just his body, but his sense of power. The intention behind it all reminded him that he was still the master of his own vitality. The best part, Robert said, was how it affected everything else. When you start the day proving to yourself that you're still strong enough to do hard things, you spend the rest of the day acting like someone who's strong enough to do hard things. 3 weeks in, Robert's wife initiated again. This time he didn't pretend to be asleep. This time his body answered the call with the kind of enthusiasm he thought he'd lost forever. "I felt like a man again," he said simply, not trying to be young, not pretending the years hadn't passed, but fully, powerfully, undeniably male, like I still had something to offer, like I was still worth wanting. The fire hadn't gone out. It had just been waiting for someone to tend it properly. 6 weeks into his morning ritual, Robert experienced something he hadn't felt since his 50s. He woke up hungry. Not for food, though that too had returned with surprising intensity. Hungry for the day, hungry for his wife, hungry for life itself. "I opened my eyes and felt alive," he told me, "like my blood was moving with purpose again, like I was inhabited by someone who still had power." The transformation wasn't just physical, though the physical changes were undeniable. Robert's energy had returned, not the frantic energy of youth, but something deeper, more sustained. The kind of vitality that comes from a body that's being properly tended. His wife cornered him one evening. "What's different?" she asked. "You're present again, like you've come back from somewhere far away." He had come back, From the grey place where men go when they stop believing their bodies house something worth cultivating, where they accept diminishment as inevitable instead of seeing it as optional. The morning ritual taught me something, Robert said. Power isn't something that gets taken from you as you age. It's something you either maintain or abandon. And I'd been abandoning it for months. The cold showers had become less about shock and more about declaration. Every morning, Robert stood under that cold water and proved to himself that he was still capable of choosing discomfort in service of strength. Still willing to do what was hard because the reward was worth it. The foods he chose became a daily act of self-respect. He wasn't just eating, he was feeding his fire. Pomegranate seeds that burst on his tongue like tiny promises. Dark chocolate that dissolved slowly, reminding him that pleasure was still his to claim. But the real change, Robert said, was in how I carried myself. When you start the day doing things that make you feel powerful, you spend the rest of the day acting like someone who has power. His handshake got firmer, his voice got deeper. His laugh came from his chest instead of his throat. He started making decisions instead of asking for opinions. Started leading conversations instead of just participating in them. The bedroom became a place of rediscovery, not just of desire, though that had returned with surprising force, but of confidence. Of the feeling that he was still a man worth wanting, still someone who could give pleasure and take it without apology. My wife said something that stopped me cold, Robert shared. You're dangerous again, she said. And she was smiling when she said it, like dangerous was exactly what she'd been missing. Dangerous, powerful, vital, alive. These weren't words Robert thought applied to men in their 70s, but his morning ritual had taught him something revolutionary. Age doesn't automatically diminish masculine power, neglect does. I realized, he said, that I'd been living like masculinity was something that expired. Like there was a cut-off date for feeling powerful in my own skin. But vitality isn't about the calendar. It's about cultivation. Robert started sharing his ritual with other men, not pushing it, that's not how men work, but mentioning it, casually, in the way men pass along important information without making a big deal about it. The responses surprised me, he said. So many men our age living in that grey place, accepting that the fire was supposed to go out, grateful to learn that someone else had found a way to keep it burning. The man in the mirror wasn't apologizing anymore, wasn't asking permission to take up space, wasn't moving through the world like someone whose best days were behind him. He was moving like someone whose power was his to command, whose vitality was his to maintain, whose masculinity didn't have an expiration date. At 72, Robert said, I'm not trying to be 30 again. I'm trying to be 72, like it's a choice I'm making every morning. Like this age can still mean being fully alive, fully present, fully powerful. The fire had never really gone out. It had just been waiting for someone brave enough to tend it. Your vitality isn't gone. It's just unfed. Your power isn't diminished. It's just uncultivated. Your fire isn't out. It's just waiting for you to remember how to stoke it. You don't need to accept the slow fade. You don't need to live in the grey place where men go when they stop believing their bodies house something worth maintaining. You need cold water that shocks your system awake. You need foods chosen for power, not just convenience. You need mornings that remind you that being a man at 70 can still mean being dangerous in all the best ways. Your wife is still there. Your fire is still there. Your power is still there. It's all just waiting for you to tend it properly. Tomorrow morning, turn the shower handle to cold for just 30 seconds. Feel your body remember what it's like to be fully awake. Choose one food that feeds power instead of just hunger. If this struck something deep, if you know a man who's forgotten his fire is still burning, who needs reminding that masculine power doesn't have an expiration date, share this with him. We're not meant to fade quietly, we're meant to burn until the very end. You're still here and you're not done.